So often overlooked, I don't want to say often, but I guess maybe at this time of the year, easily overlooked. We talk about students coming back to school, about what the school year is going to be like, and then we forget that Montreal, in terms of a rental market, pretty tough market here. We hear this every year come around moving day, right? How difficult it is for some families. People, need help from the city to find a place to live. Yet we never associate students with that because they're not here till the fall.
Well, and to think we used to have a reputation as one of the most affordable places to find housing for students, right? Like you could always find great apartments, great deals. It seems to me it's been a good long while since that was the case.
I'm also thinking, too, it seems to me that in the past, I don't know, say 10 years, a lot more student housing has gone up in this city. Like I think of Sherbrooke across from McGill, hotels that have been converted to student housing.
Yeah, on Park Avenue, too.
Park Avenue, that building as well. That's been that way for a few years. So even with that, accommodating more students, still apparently not easy for students to find deals in the city.
Yeah, exactly.
So ADIA Giddings from Concordia University's Housing and Job Resource Center is on the line and having to deal with something like this, I guess, as students come back for the fall. ADIA, thanks for being with us.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
So can you explain how this works? You're coming, say, to Concordia to study. You're here from another city, or even if you're just, leaving home, I guess, for the first time and coming to school, looking for a place to live. How difficult is it? Is it beginning, or has it started just to become this way?
We experienced the same amount of stress from students last year. I think it's just been intensified this year because of how much we've seen apartment pricing rise. And students, as you know, are on a fixed budget, whether that's because they're getting money from government loans and bursaries, or they have a scholarship, or they're being supported by their parents. So affordability is definitely something that needs to be discussed in this situation because not a lot of these students have, full-time jobs that can help them pay rental prices that are rising constantly.
So what do you do in terms of providing support? What do you do?
We do workshops every summer, throughout the summer. And we're giving students legal information when they're getting into these leases. And we're also providing students with more knowledge of the area for students that are coming from outside of Montreal, out of province, or international students. A lot of them only look for apartments downtown, so we try to make sure that they're comfortable with the other neighborhoods in Montreal and the metro system, so that they can commute downtown in a reasonable amount of time and, get those cheaper rental prices. We also make sure that students that are getting into these leases and they might be paying security deposits that are illegal, or they might have other legal clauses, that they're given the knowledge of tenants' rights in Quebec, and they're able to even go to the tribunal or something like that and contest whatever was put into their leases.
So I heard someone on this station, I don't know if it was earlier today or this week, but regardless, they were saying basically they have an apartment right next to one of the major universities, and they refuse to rent it to students unless the student is willing to pay like a $5,000 deposit. And and the situation is like that because they've had such a rotten time with students in those apartments. So it's almost like there needs to be some sort of outreach program, right, where we agree that the students are going to behave and then the landlords aren't going to charge those security deposits. What can be done about this?
Yeah, of course. In those situations of leaving the apartment early or leaving the apartment in a wreck, we do our best to educate students and let them know, hey, if your apartment is a mess, you might need to hire a cleaner or take a couple of days off to actually clean the apartment when you leave. And we tell students of their responsibilities as tenants, because that's definitely a problem. However, with deposits, there are situations where landlords can take those tenants to the tribunal and get that money back afterwards. I think that definitely on our side, we try to educate students as much as possible of their responsibilities as a tenant in the rental market, because you're not seeing the same things in private student residences, sorry. So these students are kind of less vulnerable in those types of apartments because they might be new. This might be their first time alone and they might just not know or not have the capability of being like responsible tenants.
Yeah.
So we try to educate them as much as possible, like, hey, this is what you need to do when you're moving into the apartment, and this is what you need to do when you leave the apartment, so that you're not set in this situation where your landlord can take you to the Tribunal Administrative du Logement and, get damages as they deserve if you damage the apartment.
Are you seeing a lot of price gouging? Like, as we know that there's, a lot of demand and not very many apartments available, are you seeing beyond the security deposits that landlords are simply, either taking bidders, because I've heard of that happening, or jacking the prices up to an unreasonable level?
Yeah, definitely. We've seen people in like Facebook housing groups and stuff like that, where the landlord will advertise the apartment as one rate, and then as soon as students reach out, the landlord says, "Oh, sorry, we had to change the monthly rent to like $1,500 instead of $1,450 or something along those lines." We've seen that a lot. We do see a lot of like security deposit, first and last month's rent. Other deposits like furniture deposits and key deposits and stuff like that.
And that's all illegal, right? None of that. You're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, none of that is legal in Quebec.
Which doesn't stop, obviously, landlords from doing it, because we're talking about that. Do you keep hearing of cases like this on a regular basis? And what do you do when someone comes to you and says, hey, wait a sec, I don't know necessarily the law as far as renting is concerned. Do you provide the information for them on your own? Do you send them to deal with, the rental board? How does it work?
Yeah, we provide that information on our own. Our office has been open for a while now, so we have accumulated information from other housing groups and the tribunal. So we do have a good amount of information, legal information, to give the students when they're first starting out. If it is a complicated issue, especially regarding like a student that might go to the TAL to try and get their security deposit back if they, paid it and then realize that it was illegal. We try our best to help them ourselves, but we can also point them to other housing groups, maybe in their neighborhood, that does a lot of good work, or maybe some legal aid lawyers that can help them if the situation progresses.
What happens if a student, and I'm thinking this is primarily obviously from students coming from outside of Montreal, what happens to a student who simply hasn't been able to find a place to stay? What are their options?
A lot of them have gone to temporary housing, and they're just really trying to do their best to search for more permanent accommodations. We try to make sure that students are also, willing to potentially get roommates and live in, reach out to room for rent ads and other ads like that. So we're trying our best to point them into the right direction, but there is a huge housing shortage. We have seen students have a lot of success with room for rent ads and ads looking for roommates. Our site Classifieds posts those ads all the time with other Concordia students who are looking for roommates, or other people in the community that have an extra bedroom. A lot of older people have actually been posting room for rent ads because they have an extra bedroom in their downtown apartment and they're fine with a student living there. So we're trying our best to really make sure that students have as many as options as possible. It's really hard though.
Yeah, I bet it is, especially, as you said, with the situation being as dire as it already is for anybody looking for a place.
One last question. I'm assuming that this has been exacerbated now that everything is back in person, right? When it was online living, people weren't displacing themselves.
Yeah, it's definitely been exacerbated now. During COVID, a lot of buildings, a lot of students moved out of the accommodations that they were living in, and then those buildings might have been sold or renovated or something like that. So they might currently be off the market or just being back onto the market and a lot more expensive and just not really accommodated for students. So it's just like a really big disruption in the rental market in 2021 and then again in 2022 that has caused such a problem.
Yeah, ADIA, listen, thank you so much for the time this afternoon. We're talking about the kids going back right now. So if you're a landlord, I hate to say it that way. It sounds so simplistic. Be cool, be nice. They're just trying to do what they have to do to get an education. Thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.